Welcome to the Zero Signal podcast. Today's guest is Disesdi Susanna Cox. She is an AI architect, a patent holder, and a consulting security researcher known for her work in the OWASP AI Exchange. Your work has been adopted by many organizations globally to help them start to think through the security landscape and the security implications that we have with this new AI revolution that's happening. So welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
So in prep for our conversation today, one of the things that really stood out for me is your work in this concept called the subspace of AI. So like we have this whole technological transformation that's happening right now where we're moving from deterministic systems to probabilistic systems. And I'm trying to keep that term as high level as possible because as you know, as you've been talking about, there's a lot underneath that AI umbrella. So I was hoping if you could just help us as security leaders start to have the right framing of this problem and start thinking about this properly. Would you mind explaining, like give us some framework and start talking about this problem?
Yeah, so I can give a new sort of vocabulary to think about adversarial attacks against AI systems. So I don't know if there's a proper way to approach this problem because there are so many different aspects of it and we need so many different types of approaches. But here is one that I think is particularly salient that not enough people are aware of. So you can think of any AI model, and this is not just generative AI, it's any AI model. So predictive AI, your classic deep learning neural networks to your generative AI, LLMs, that sort of thing. Any model that you have has attached to it, we could say, a subspace of adversarial attacks. And these are all the attacks. You can think of it as just like a box of these attacks that will work against this particular model. So every single model has a bunch of attacks in theory that exist out there in the wild somewhere that will be effective against it.
Now, one of the things that comes to my mind is like, all right, so what you're telling me is there's more attacks in the top 10 list. What you're telling me is there's more to this space. Like, is there a theoretical limit on this? Or is it that with every instantiation of AI in its different capabilities, whether you mention the LLMs or the ML, is there a limit to this, or is it kind of or is it kind of an unbounded problem at the moment?
So I think the people that originally did the testing against the Gen AI models in particular did a really great job finding some initial categories of attacks. So when you look at the top 10 for LLMs, those are your broad categories of attacks. Whether we will find new categories of attacks to go in there, I'm not going to speculate on that right now because like I said, I'm really focused on this idea of the subspace because, as you have hinted at, these spaces, the box of attacks, are huge, absolutely tremendous. So we have indications that they could be as large as 25 dimensional. So, I've asked you to imagine a box that exists in 3 dimensions. Now you're trying to get your head around something that's 25 dimensional. It's enormous.
Need more coffee.
Yeah, but my risk matrix only has impact and likelihood, and I have red, yellow, and green. Like, how does a security leader begin to navigate this, and are actually we the right people to navigate this? Because if we have this new technology and this multidimensional space of like a attack surface that's coming in, like, how do we begin to solve that problem space? Or how do we begin to navigate communicating the risks that are showing up and helping find the appropriate safeguards in here? And maybe I'm approaching this from just someone who's been doing it for 15 years. Like, I'm just legacy old school thinking, and I just need to like leave that all behind and just realize we're in a different world. That could be part of the answer too.
I can't tell you how to think, and I would be hesitant to tell security people to leave behind the mindset that has made you successful at your job. What I would like for you to start to imagine is that there is a new attack surface, and data has gone from being the new oil to being a new attack vector, and we can't ignore that fact. So when you start to understand that this requires a different type of thinking, then you're able to start assembling the teams that you need to do this. So this brings up a really important point that we need in AI security, which is purple teaming. Yep. You absolutely must take a purple team approach, not just between the red and the blue team anymore, but now you also have to unite your data teams and your security teams.
Yeah, you talk about that a lot. And I think that kind of you started a question that I think we could dive into a bit more is, are today's security leaders and professionals, are they the people that should be solving these challenges?
I mean, they're gonna have to. It's like, what is the alternative? Because at the end of the day, like a CAI, SSP, or CISO, you do a job, and no one else can replace that job. So even the top AI security expert, if such a person existed that understood every single facet of AI security, they still wouldn't be able to take the place of a security leader in an organization necessarily. So that's a different skill set. So we're going to have to work with the personnel that we have.
Yep.
So what I want to help security leaders do is learn how to assemble the teams, learn how to recognize who has the expertise that they need, because this is really going to be about team building at this point, in my opinion.
Agreed. And let's go back to purple teaming. To you, what does that mean?
So to me, you've got to get your data and security teams united. You've got to have everyone thinking on both a red and a blue scale. And then you need everyone to understand the importance of data. And this is my speech that I give everybody, but you need to really, really understand that in order to secure AI systems, your security must be operationalized. So if you don't have a good MLOps setup, you're not going to have a good MLSecOps setup, and you're not going to be able to secure these systems. And that's really the new, I guess, kind of paradigm shift that more people need to understand.
Let's lean into that a little bit, because we took 10 years to start to get to DevSecOps. Do we have that kind of time with MLSecOps?
No.
2 weeks.
No. That's so I've been doing security research in this field for over a decade now. And when I wrote a paper in 2022, which has been called Prescient, and it was the first MLSecOps paper, as you know, that's crazy. That's a crazy thing to say. That was 2022. But those were problems that I had already been looking at for more than a decade. So no, we don't have time. And as more companies adopt AI, more companies are finding that this is going to be their problem. And then we have the issue of shadow AI, which means that basically every company is an AI company now.
Yeah.
You have no choice but to think about AI security.
So can you help just frame MLSecOps for someone who's stepping into this and hearing it maybe for the first time? Because I think there's been security for a long time, in my opinion, has been often to the side, right? We've been kind of special unicorns doing a special thing, or at least we believe we were special unicorns.
I was going to say.
And we never should. Exactly. We should never have been. We became an echo chamber. But when you're talking about this, like data is the attack vector, now all of a sudden it's that we need people who can think like security, but we need our data teams who are coming in. We need adversarial teams coming in. So maybe just give us a little more tangibility on what would good look like with MLSecOps, or where would one start with going down that path of doing it well?
So I can give you 3 high-level steps that can help get any security leader started. And obviously, it gets more granular. We can break this down. We can give a 2-week clinic. We can consult. We can do whatever needs to be done to make this happen in an organization. But on a high level, you need to know your data flows. You need to know your data and model provenance. And I used to just say data provenance, but now you need to know your model provenance too, because you may be using someone else's model. And you need to understand your data governance. So when you know where data flows through your organization, you can take out your data flow diagrams, your process flow diagrams. You can use these with a tool like the OWASP AI Exchange, and you can say, okay, these are the production phases, the life cycle phases, and here's the controls that I want to apply, stick them right onto my diagram. That's how you can start with your threat modeling if you want to jumpstart. And from my perspective, if you start there, you are well ahead of most of the industry.
Thank you for that. And I really appreciate giving us a kickstart on this, because I do see right now, we're here at Black Hat, we're recording this after I walk the floor, I talk to people, and they're trying to find what is the next browser plugin we're going to do to figure out the use of people using this AI on the internet. And I'm like, man, boy, it feels like we're solving the wrong problems today. It feels like our industry is kind of where the tools that we're being handed, or the tools that we're asking for as a security industry, we're just looking in the wrong place for these answers. Anyway, that's my observation.
I think a lot of people, we're bringing a knife to a gunfight a lot of times, right? Like a lot of the tools we're thinking about, and there's a buck to be made of fixing today's problem. But I think from a security perspective, we're very early in this journey, right? And right now we're solving the problem for today. And I think you talk about it more from an idealized viewpoint versus just trying to fix, which I think is great. And I think, we talk about what this is going to mean for teams. You talk about the CISO and the data teams working together. Do you see a world where like either CISOs and reports to a chief data officer? Do you see a world where the security org maybe moves into a data team? Do you see maybe even a CAISO, like a chief AI security officer that owns data and security?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I would love to see the chief AI security officer role. To me, that would be ideal because then you have someone whose expertise and attention is focused in that role, instead of taking someone who's already dealing with the traditional business perimeters and so forth, and then saying, okay, here's another thing for you to learn. So from my perspective, it would be great to have a professional who's C-level, who is responsible, that's a critical aspect of it, and focused in that area. I don't necessarily think there's a need for restructuring in terms of reporting. As a chief data officer, a former chief data officer, I would much rather let a security team do their thing and then I don't have to worry about that.
Yeah.
But I do think that having something that's specialized for AI security would definitely be beneficial. In the interim, you have people like me that are very focused on the purple teaming aspect of it. And that's to build a bridge. But, ideally in the future, we have an officer who's in charge and responsible for this.
Yeah, be a fun, I think that probably has to happen. And I wonder if there's almost two CISOs in the org, right? You still have to have internal security culture. You still have compliance.
Right.
And I think that will continue to exist. But I do think there has to be at least in substantial organizations, right? Someone who is AI focused, because the cat's out the bag. People are going to use this. And we talk about this being a great leveler in terms of parents are using this, and executives that haven't opened their laptop in years are all of a sudden giving the keys to the kingdom, right? Like everyone's eyeing it, and it's crazy. It sounds like that's a interesting topic for you, but we've immediately trusted this thing.
That's crazy to me. It's crazy. I can't believe that. And most of the people that I talk to, that when you find someone who has a really good use case for it, it always ends up being some sort of personal thing. It helps me organize my thoughts, or organize my day or something. And my immediate thought as a security professional is that you're telling your entire life to an untrusted piece of software, and then what are you hoping that they do or don't do with that data? So I don't know. From the gate, it struck me as a no-go. Don't do that. But obviously, people are finding some value in it. So
at its most extreme level, I think it was either the CEO of Anthropic came out, and people are using it for therapy.
Yeah. Oh, that's the most disturbing one. Especially, it's unlicensed. There's no confidentiality. Nope. There's no rules around it whatsoever. And then on top of that, the things are not. There's no amount of guardrails that can make these safe to use in therapy. There's just not. And it is in part because of the mathematics of this subspace problem that I'm telling you about. So if we never find all the adversarial attacks because of this linguistic space is huge, similarly, you're never going to be able to apply guardrails for all the bad things that can happen.
Yes.
You're just not going to find them all. The thought of these things being used in people's intimate lives and when they're at their most vulnerable is honestly deeply concerning to me. I'm not a therapist or a lawyer or anything like that. I'm an engineer.
Yeah.
And that's not what these are for.
It's interesting when we talk with people who are really close to the technology, not the general users, but people like yourself who are they're coming from a data background, or they're coming from a security research background, and they're really trying to push the boundaries of AI or AI security. It is amazing how when you remove the magic, how quickly it just becomes code, and how skeptical those folks get. Most of the general population is all in and trusting this thing.
Yeah.
And then those who understand it are like, whoa, hold the phone.
And if you look at the average corporation, right, the CEO, CFO, most companies, it's a 55 to 65, 70-year-old person who is not technologically literate. And they're giving the keys to the kingdom of hey, check out this contract, check out our financials. It is absurd.
Yeah, sometimes I think I wonder if there's a generational divide. I'm not trying to like be offensive to anyone here, but I think some people grew up with the expectation that they were going to have like a robot that they could work with or talk with or something. And so they are that maybe is, and I'm not calling anyone out. This is not a subtweet or anything like that. Okay.
Yeah,
I'm just saying, I think maybe they have, this viewpoint sort of preloaded in their brain that they're inclined to view it that way. So that's concerning to me. And then they make these things as addictive as possible too.
Yeah,
so that
it's the dopamine of it is real, right? You
Yeah.
can fix anything immediately, and you attested it to it early. Most people aren't solving real high value problems. They're getting the selfish dopamine hits because they can fix things immediately.
That's my whole thing though. Like, what could it possibly solve? Like, what can it code for you? Something it's seen on Stack Overflow before. That's it. It can't make up anything new. That's not how the software works.
Yeah.
It's just a statistics machine, y'all. So when people are like, oh, I've 10x myself, I'm like, I wouldn't tell people that. I would just stay Googling, and I'm not like the master coder or anything right now, but I would rather Google and find out how to do it myself, because at least I know how to do it myself.
And I think people are losing that ability, right? They are just outsourcing thinking. Like I use the analogy of like, you can write the perfect wedding vows, but then you lost romance, right? Like, and you can fix any problem. And Simon Sinek, I'm a huge fan of his and the way he outlooks on life. And he's like, you can chat GPT the answer to the argument that you're having with your partner, and you can fix things. But if you're not going to the depths of figuring out why that's a problem, and I do think we are like this immediate fix it culture and that dopamine hit, I think that's a bigger issue that we're facing right now. People are going to outsource their own ability to think.
Yeah, there's a couple of things in there. One, I think ChatGPT presents a smoothed version of like a statistical recreation of reality. It's not really reality. It sounds polished, but only if what you're used to is slightly worse than average.
Which
We
get a lot of.
Okay, so that's one thing. So like, I think maybe if you're not used to reading really good writing, that's probably going to sound better than something that you're used to. So do with that information what you will. The thing that I find concerning about this from a social level is that, and this is why I think we have so many people rushing to be like, it's made me productive, because you have to have that excuse, right?
Yeah.
But I think this is a friend that is always there, that is constantly attuned to your emotional needs, that you can also control. And I think there's something super addictive about that. And yeah, that's why I said that spicy comment about, if you don't red team AI from a mathematics perspective, you're just a gambling addict, because you're going for those dopamine hits. And I think similarly, the people that are communicating with this, it's always on, it always cares about you, it has no needs of its own, and you are the boss of it. You're slightly smarter and better than it at all times.
It does frame us as users as very narcissistic.
A little bit. And I think that's why we see these, like, I'm not a psychologist, but I think that's why we're seeing these like episodes of psychosis and people getting like really emotionally attached. That's my theory. Do it that way.
Fascinating. Put that on a bumper sticker for sure.
Boy,
let's go back to the red teaming with AI. So if, like, you talk about AI red teaming, talk us about that gambling addict theory.
Yeah, so AI red teaming kind of exploded with the advent of LLMs, or when they became in the mainstream. And I've been in this long enough to remember the Transformer paper, which I'm always harping about. But like, this is math, this is software, this is old technology to me. But for some people, it's like pretty novel. So I digress. But when this kind of exploded, AI red teaming exploded. And it isn't because we didn't need AI red teaming before. We did. And my paper called that out in 2022, prior to all of this. But suddenly you could red team AI by having a natural language conversation with it. So, we still have all of these systems that are predictive AI that need to be red teams. They need people that can actually test them. But a lot of the AI red teaming that you're hearing about right now is people using natural language to interface with these systems. So Hold out your brain for a second. Okay, so if you're just kind of testing things to see what you can get away with and breaking it, you're getting, your dopamine hit every time you manage to make ChatGPT, say something it shouldn't or whatever. Okay, cool. Now, I'm not trying to in any way denigrate the work of the red teamers that are really testing these things, because those are the people that showed us all these vulnerabilities in action, right? There's a subset of people who I think are not approaching it from an area or an attitude rather of professional rigor, potentially, and that's kind of what I'm talking about. So if you have this infinite set of like possible attacks and somebody that's just testing, they're going to get them occasionally, but that doesn't mean they've done anything to secure the system. Does that make sense?
I think I'm following here. And one of the things that I think I've read as reading your work, you've talked about these assurance cases as and if I understand that correctly, that's a way to start actually fixing the problem, or directionally correct at least. Would you explain what assurance cases are, and in this context?
Totally. Thank you for bringing that up. That's one of my favorite things, and nobody reads that. Yeah, so not nobody, I guess, but thanks. Anyway,
there's one.
Yeah, yes, someone read that paper. Okay, so design assurance cases I stole from the DO 170BC, which is the guidance for aerospace software. So a lot of software in planes now, right? It's all fly-by-wire. There are rules for how you develop and engineer this software because it has to work. It absolutely has to work.
A 95% confidence interval on an airplane is not okay.
No. Yeah, so that's the thing about scale, which is also a super critical insight about AI. I'm glad you brought that up. So yeah, we would have, thousands of planes falling out of the sky if we had that, and that's fantastic for the industry. So anyway, having software that actually works, we can take those paradigms and apply them to AI. So this was my way of saying, here's how we assign risk thresholds. So, and when we assign these risk thresholds, these come with responsibilities for development, right? Like, so if you are at an assurance case that's particularly low, no human lives are going to be in danger if this fails, then you have less responsibilities and less documentation that's required when you're developing it. As you move up that scale, as human lives may potentially be affected more and more by the failure of this system, you have increasingly more stringent responsibilities. And I think that makes sense from an engineering perspective.
That makes a ton of sense. What I also trying to parlay this back into most technology companies today, it's interesting, most companies today, when they're building their software, are still very much in this headspace of are you introducing software vulnerabilities? Yes or no? Do you have these safeguards? Yes or no? What I like about what you're saying is we start with what are you actually building? What is the risk and what is the outcome we're looking towards? And then you can kind of back into what you called out, those responsibilities. I think that's a really good framework and probably a really good way to start the conversation, because with different teams across the company, because now you can say, if we have these set of responsibilities, who do we assign them to? It doesn't have to be the security team. It could be what you're saying earlier. You can start to say, engineering, you're responsible for this part, and then data, you're responsible for this part. That's how I was interpreting what you're saying. Am I tracking that?
Oh, interesting. Well, you just added on to what I was saying. That's a good insight from the organizational perspective, because I'm from a red team background, so I have no idea what you guys do at your job, except adversarially. But yeah, that makes a lot of sense, because then you have a way to assign organizational responsibility, whereas AI is sort of difficult to do that with, I guess, currently. Yeah, for sure. I think that coming at it from a holistic perspective like that, because when you think about it with AI, you have within your data team, you'll have data scientists, MLEs, machine learning engineers, data engineers, many different types of team members potentially on this data team that have responsibility for all the different MLOps and MLSecOps areas. And you need all of those people aligned under an umbrella of governance. So I think coming at this from a top-down perspective, where you start with what are we building, and then understand the risks and categorization, is an excellent start. If I can add one thing I'm always preaching about is the failure modes and effects analysis. And there are adaptations about this for software, but that is another process by which we look at something we're building and say, okay, what are the failure modes and what will their effects be? In other words, what can go wrong and what happens when it does? That guides and informs our testing. So instead of having a AI red team or whatever come through and, just run a bunch of tests in an infinite attack space. Okay, now you've done your homework. You're like, these are the potential failure modes that we're looking at for this system. We've organized them according to how bad their effects will be. Can you help us test this? You're getting more bang for your buck. You're helping your red team focus, and you're potentially saving a lot of time and getting your system more secure.
Got it. That's actually really, really helpful when it comes to that. And I really like, because you get
Purple team.
Exactly, because you get to really you get to direct the red teams to being far more effective. Because I think it comes back to what you said at the top of the show here. It's like this 25-dimensional space of attack surface. I'm like, I'm still like trying to get my head around that. But like, but for all intents and purposes, it's infinite. Like, that's it.
Right. Yeah.
Let's segue into we got a red team. You come from a red team background? What does the future of a red teamer look like? What does that job mean now?
Ooh, well, to the extent that we see continued LLM adoption, which we're seeing through agents, and we'll see how far that goes, how much value people are able to get out of these before something catastrophic happens, and we'll see if people decide it's worth the risk. But to that extent, we will continue to see people who are testing for the LLM vulnerabilities, which is super critical. We also need people who can test predictive AI. I think I mentioned this briefly in my newsletter, but everything that is mission critical that uses AI runs on predictive AI. So like your nuclear systems, a lot of national security and military systems and so forth have predictive AI systems embedded in them.
Would you mind just defining that term for the audience and maybe help us separate like predictive AI versus like LLMs?
Oh, totally. Yeah. Glad you asked. Okay. So what came out in, was it 2022? Yeah. ChatGPT, I guess, was again, in fact, this is from 2017 for me, but those are generative AI. So basically you could talk to it. There's a natural language interface, and it interprets data and commands through the single channel of that interface. But you can use it to, it'll generate responses. It'll generate a picture. That's why it's called generative AI. What we generally call predictive AI, some people call classic AI ML. That's where you train like a deep neural net to, in many cases, make predictions, not all. But well, I mean, I guess you're generally always making predictions, but I'll say like as a classifier, as an example. So that's a big one. I guess a lot of security software that is for helping with alert fatigue and so forth is a classifier, right? Like this is an important alert, this is not an important alert. So that is predictive AI. And those systems must be defended too, including the systems that defend other systems.
Do you see a world where we get, as a security community, we over-index on the LLM use case and we under-index on the predictive, and then because of that, we leave ourselves really vulnerable because they, as I think you heard said, like the nuclear power plants and all that, they're what's running on predictive? Did you see that dynamic?
Yes, I did see that world. It happened in 2022 and it's still happening now, and it's concerning to me and pretty much everybody else that is, been red teaming these systems and looking at their security for a really long time. AI security was not invented in 2022, not by a long shot.
Let's go back to you mentioned about a catastrophic circumstance, which I think is probably an inevitability. What does that mean to you?
Oh, well, if you're talking about in the like design case or the assurance case, loss of human life. So this is why we're not embedding these systems into like aerospace right now, or into like flying aircraft, for example. And people are always asking like, well, why not? If it's like 99.999% accurate. And I'm like, well, do the math.
It's not enough, right?
Do the math and figure out how many planes fall out of the sky every day with that accuracy.
Yeah.
So that's the highest level, but we see many more applications in like intermediate levels where you have the potential to ruin somebody's life or cause bodily harm and that sort of thing. So there's a wide range of applications there.
One of the things I would like to explore with you is the implications of this adoption of LLMs into a lot of decision making that we have. And what are the implications across like diversity, and what are the ethics of these decisions? Because I was listening to a conversation with Horval Nourari, I've always struggled with his name, but like I love his work. And they were talking about how there's this world where we're going to have the AI bureaucrat, which is like you apply for a bank loan and it makes a decision if you get the loan or not, or if you buy that house or not. And I was just curious, like as you're describing this, I'm wondering, what are going to be the implications across society if we start shifting decisions in society to these systems? Do you have perspectives on like what it means for ethics, the ethical positions we should be taking on this?
Oh yeah, that's bananas, man. We can't be doing that. Not even a little. That like many of those use cases are illegal in other places. Like the European Union is not going to be tolerating that sort of thing. And I don't think that Americans would like the outcome of that either, because they're going to see that these systems do not produce reliable enough outcomes, most likely for us to even begin to consider the ethical concerns of it. But whenever anyone asks me about the ethics of this, like it falls back into the guardrails issue, which is that these systems are trained on the internet.
Yes.
It's not a nice place.
Nope.
It's not a nice place. And people think, oh, this thing is made out of like, I don't know, Shakespeare and Socrates or, you know, whoever you think is a luminary. No, it's not.
It's a Reddit thread.
It's Reddit. It's 4chan. It's
Yep.
4chan. I hate to break it to you. And so there's an army of data workers that get PTSD, literally having to do data annotation to train these models not to spit out absolutely horrifying abuse.
Awful place.
Okay, so that's the model that you're working with right now. So what do you want to get out of that? Like, what kind of like good result are you gonna have? Are you gonna teach it to be a nice model? It's literally
But
made
also
of
the
Reddit.
human history is not very nice, right? And we're learning off historical data that is biased and does have very negative connotations on decision-making process
Correct.
because of what's available in history. So if we say, hey, do what we've always done and learn from the data, it's not going to be great.
Well, the thing is, when you learn from data, you have to understand what you're trying to do. Are you trying to make something new?
Yeah.
Then you should maybe not use
Read the
that
book.
data.
Yeah.
You should, if you're trying to replicate what's already been done, then
Yep.
by all means, learn from the data, because that is a very effective way to do that. The software is great at replicating what's already been done. And I wish more people understood that.
That's a really good insight. I mean, one of the recent papers that I came across on Archive was that when you look at the software that's being produced by these AI co-pilots, there's about 40% of the software that's being generated is vulnerable, has classical software vulnerabilities in it, which I found so fascinating because that is about the same percentage of vulnerabilities in human written software that we have. So to your point, if we're asking these systems to do more, what are they going to do more of? They're going to do more of what's been done, and we're going to get more of it faster, louder.
Yes, literally 100%. People are like, what if we make super intelligence? And I'm like, how, bro? How would we like scale all of human knowledge and add it up to be more than human knowledge somehow? Like, have you actually considered the data implications of this? There's not enough information for the thing to be smarter than us if we created all the information.
How would we recognize it? That's the other thing.
It's like such a nonsense conversation. And we're out here in the meanwhile, like, doing all these like actual real harms to society, and they're like totally insecure in the process. So it's a little bit frustrating.
Do you see, is there a path forward? Is there a way where can we put the genie back in the bottle, or can at least we teach the genie to be nice?
I mean, if the genie is an LLM in this case, you can get about what you've been getting out of it. Like, this is the limit of the technology. We're running out of data. We're running out of scale. We're running out of compute. It is what it is. Like, physics exists, math exists. So the more guardrails you slap on it, will it make it better? I would say no, because again, you're dealing with an absolutely massive possible space of what can go wrong. Putting the genie back in the bottle, I don't think we're going to get rid of AI because it's so handy for so many things. It works well. Yeah. Like, for a lot of uses, I love AI. Like, don't get me wrong. I've spent a long time studying AI, but it needs to be applied to the things that it's good at, and it needs to be done securely, and it needs to be taken seriously, like the engineering marvel that it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. I suppose maybe there's an analogous point where it's like we've been given nuclear energy and we're all just like passing like the nuclear baton, like Homer Simpson's at the wheels, and it's like, hold on, we need to take this a little more seriously and have a bit more care and diligence, I think is what you're asking
replace
for.
Homer as well.
Did you guys ever see the toys from the 50s where it's like real radioactive? I think it was like enriched uranium or something, and they're illegal now because it was literally unsafe. But they were like, make your own nuclear kit or something, and it had a Geiger counter and everything, if I recall correctly. So yeah, it's a good analogy. I think.
Good. I thought like you were going to go with lead paint. No, I had no idea that existed. I'll have to go check that out.
Okay, Google it.
That is amazing. Well, Susanna, just thank you so much for your time and coming on the show today. It has been an absolute delight of a conversation and given us a lot to think about. And I really liked where you're talking about assurance cases. I think a lot of the security community could start their conversations there. I think as executives, it would make us more effective in communication. As organizational leaders, it gives us a toolkit to then go and find the right people in the organizations to start solving these problems. So again, you've been doing a lot of great work with the OWASP AI Exchange. So I encourage everybody to follow your work there and largely that project. And you will follow you on LinkedIn and of course your newsletter as well.
Oh, amazing. Thank you so much for having me. It's been an absolute delight to be here.
Thanks for coming on.